Hello. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Asako Shiroki. I'm happy to given this opportunity to speak at this event. And also thank you all for participating in this Zoom. So now at the moment I'm in Japan and back to Japan for the first time in 3 years. I couldn't back to Japan with my family because of the pandemic so long time. So now I'm little strange feeling because of the time difference in between London and Tokyo. So on my presentation, first I want to briefly introduce myself, and then I will show my previous work and also an ongoing exhibition at Daiwa Foundation. Now I'm based in Berlin and Tokyo, but mostly in Berlin now. Before coming to Berlin, I studied metal engraving as an undergraduate. But that time I didn't feel comfortable with my finished work because that time was more about creating form as a reproduction of my thoughts. Like I was tracing my plan and replacing it with material. This process was not very interested for me. Then I changed and studied woodworking in postgraduate as a material that is not controlled by plan, but rather than by dealing with a material with different personalities, where everything doesn't go according to plan and where I can invite others to my work. As I continue to make the work, my interest gradually shifted to the space and surrounding that made it supported, rather than form that emerged. The word that I saw there gradually expanded the scale of my work beyond that I could see on my desk. From now here, I will show some of my previous work. This is my first exhibition since I came to Berlin in 2014 at Kunsthaus Bethanien. I create the non-experienced viewing point and disclosing at the same time other word of the things by losing the meaning and associated with the form. I want to disclose anonymous yet intriguing layer in this world with my work. And most of my works are made mainly from wood. I started by sewing the wood rather than dismantling ready-made object and working backwards to create my work. This is because I want to make my own choice of form as the function at the deepest level where the form emerged. The forms that seems to have a purpose and formed from the point where they lose their functionality as a use. The form emerged from a different scale other than human scale, which is based on the functionality. By shifting and switching the standard of things as in this work, I'm trying to vibrate the meaning of the and concept of things as well as physical memory. It's also attempt to delay and understand the work rather than to have the viewer immediately understand the work in front of them. In the case of this work, the viewer walking through the city after viewing the exhibition look at the stone pavements or surrounding to evoke personal memories, thereby loosely connecting the exhibition space with their personal living space and bringing the work to their world outside of venue. Most of my works build up from individual parts and stand or on their own balance over gravity and the mass, and are filled with a tension where each component of the whole is instantly transformed into a part and the material once it is disassembled. In this work, the pillar seems like stabilized by the floor and the ceiling, but they are held in space by unstable balance of the staircase. It's like a walking stick for the people. And this work, I only made a part of the piece, and then the strings keeps the shape as a circle, and the whole piece is made by action of placing or putting together. The main reason why I started to make such a disassembled and stands on its own balanced work was because I experienced the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. On the 11th of March 2011, the day of the earthquake, I had just had an exhibition and my work was broken by an earthquake. At the time, my work were made using the traditional joinery, and also using the glue to give additional strength. But still, they break. No matter how much strength I add to something with a form, it will be break. Then I realized how ephemeral and temporary form can be. Later, when I left Japan and started living in Berlin, I found myself reflexively shrinking when I saw the things in the house stuck far above my head or unstable balanced. Living in a place without earthquake has given me the chance to reconsider the way things are. Then I started to make work that were free from glue, that stood by balancing and always in state of release. This led me to question the temporality and the physicality of the works, which only have a form in the exhibition space in this moment. While my previous work was dealing with everyday action and technique that is not given a name from this exhibition at the National Art Center in Tokyo, titled "A Loom That Grows Buoyancy," I started to have interest from a number of events that existing together in this world, such as history and culture and custom, or poetry, literature, biology, and the perception of flora and fauna. I expand my work from there. This work looks like art in European architecture, but it was created according to the Japanese Nara period technique for seeing the divine in sculpture. The act of trying to artificially create or see divine at the time is similar to the act we do today in creating artworks. In this work, creating a continuity between the presence and absence of mirrors, I see my reflection or not, or a reflected other side and this side. This continuity of those changes is said to put them in like a trance-like state of consciousness for seeing the divine in sculpture. This work is liquid pulse, buoyancy, and dynamics. And by researching the collection of the museum, museum is a museum of the civilizations of Europe and the Mediterranean in Europe. No, sorry, in Marseille, in France. I interpret history from a new perspective by reconstructing form from object and the buildings built by civilization and replacing them with a physical phenomena and movement, active and the gesture and behavior regarding to the boundary and history right of geopolitics. From here, I will talk about the ongoing exhibition at the Daiwa Foundation. And this time, this work, A Twig of Interweaving Passage, is originally produced as my first public art and was exhibited in Northern Germany last year. For this work, I visited the site and explored to different locations to see how I could incorporate a place into the work and what I could relate to such a huge land. When I visited the location, the story I experienced came up in my mind. One day I was walking on the street. I found the twig, which was very charming. The next day I found another twig again in the same place. I wondered why there are twigs that catch my eye in the same place. And then I found there was a bird's nest above my head. The moment I realized that the twig had fallen in the process of building this bird's nest. And then I was filled with a shock and wonder. It's like I heard the peek into the world of the birds. And this moment, we are able to stand on a higher ground to get the bird's eye view of others who are separated from me or us. Through the shape of the twig, I can imagine your world. I want to create my work that function like those twigs. The title of this exhibition, The Wind Blows In, was also given in the hope that the work would function like the wind that came in when I opened the door or a window to different world and the sensation that I experienced at this time. And this work, Singing Double Birds, embodied the movement of a bird's flight, rising and falling. And this work mirror reflected the wind. The audience associate the shape with a mirror, but there is no actual mirror here. What did the audience associate the mirror with? The physical memory of the shape is evoked and the invisible things can be recognized. In other words, we can also see the wind. And this piece, Your Voice Echoed, was created as an echo from other piece in this room and doesn't have a strong meaning at this moment, but I think those kind of work will later come to have a strong meaning. I don't try to force myself to understand what I don't understand on the piece, but leave it as a punctuation for a future piece. I think my work needs more love and more uncertain part like this. This is always subject for me. And for this exhibition, I'm working in several new media, and this is a combination of photography and plaster work. And also in the other room, I made a film as well. And this piece is based on crumbs of the cracker from my daughter. and she was born last year during the pandemic. And the form of a clacker on the floor are presenting phase of the moon. And the photography is about scattered of clackers like stardust. Babies have the same perception as a human, but they are not having the root necessary for a social life yet. The actions and thoughts my daughter shows me are a universe for beyond my imagination and experience. I've been quoting furniture elements in my work, but furniture is in a way are things for mature humans. However, I think that the addition of a human being without any social lure yet, it has given depth to the concept of things and widen the view. And we have each had many opportunity to confront ourselves during the pandemic. Each of us has had our notion of what is normal, usual, and right overturned. And now we need to think about our conceptions of things anew. In this pandemic, I was very impressed by the life that lived inside of me and the flowers that, apart from our confusion, bloom as if nothing had happened, never forgetting their season as before. So I wanted to give the form to those things. So thank you.
Right. So Ellen, I think it's time for you to come on.
Hi there. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me. And Asako, thank you so much for that lovely presentation of your work. It was really, really great to hear you talk through your previous work and then also the exhibition that we're, I guess, gathering here today in celebration of. I mean, I've only kind of recently come to your work, and it was really through this invitation, but also through seeing your work in London in your current exhibition, The Wind Blows In, which is on until the 16th of May. So I should just say, if you are in London, really do try and come and visit. And the space is such a kind of interesting kind of exhibition space as well. And I think your work that you've just talked us through briefly really speaks to this certain like domesticity of the space, but also it's right beside Regent Park, and in the windows you can see the park through the exhibition space. So I thought it might be nice for us to I guess start with this exhibition and maybe give the audience that joins us today online almost a kind of walkthrough of the exhibition, because we obviously can't be there together, which would be maybe a lot nicer. And the way that you've, I guess, greeted the space and thought about these two rooms. You had a lovely slide earlier of the kind of exhibition layout, which I thought maybe we could start with. And then moving on into a twig of interweaving passages. Okay. I have more additional the slides, so maybe we can see this, our conversation. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Thank you. I also really appreciate what you said about this kind of idea of love and uncertainty, and how to greet your work with these two kind of atmospheres and elements. Because when you were just elaborating on your practice, absolutely, I felt there was a certain atmosphere that I couldn't quite put my finger on when I went and visited your show. But I think these two words, love and uncertainty, seem to really like summarize that for me. So the gallery space, as you can see here, is divided up into two rooms, and you've worked across these two rooms and actually put some of the smaller ceramic works that you mentioned earlier in other areas of the space, which I noticed only through through by accident, probably when I was coming into the gallery space, but we'll come back to this work. I wanted to start first with the Parkside Gallery, where you've installed a twig of interweaving passages. And as you've just described, this work really, I think, brings together quite a lot of elements that are in your ongoing work, which is working with wood, thinking through found objects and how to kind of, I guess, have a kind of refreshed perspective on a found object. This notion of balance and tension that you continually come back to, as well as this video work, which you've installed basically where we're looking from now in terms of it's on the wall. And the video work depicts this installation, but displayed in a kind of grassy, under a tree. And the audio is quite loud. I was really struck by how loud the audio was of these bird song, as well as this wind blowing in the trees. So you, as a viewer, you were looking outside to the park, as everyone can see here in this image, and you were walking around your installation whilst also kind of seeing it mirrored, which is another key thing in your work, I think, in this video piece. So I wanted to basically start with this work, but really hone in on the idea that this is, as everyone can see, a table, but it's kind of turned upside down. It's a table with drawers in it, but the drawers are empty. They've got very kind of universal details on the legs of the tables, but everything's kind of slightly off. Everything's slightly not the same as perhaps it would be in real life, as you've just explained in your work. So I just wanted to maybe ask what the significance of this kind of fractured upside down table is, because it seems to anchor the whole exhibition for me in some way.
Yeah, when I make the artwork of this artwork, before I visited the site and see around, like exploring the space, the place. And that time I felt the very strong power of the plants growing out from the extended ground. So then I decided I wanted to create something like a hidden by the grasses in the summertime. So when the grass was overgrown, so then sometimes like a level of ground will be higher than the other season because of the grass overgrowing. So I was always interested in this kind of scenery. So then I thought maybe I should make some legs as a overgrown plants or grasses, and also the other structures also can be the same height with the leg structure. So then I wanted to make our like a little higher ground than the other ground of the ground that place. So yeah, so then the first design like a horizontally higher than the other land. So I wanted to make it like this, but unfortunately the grass never comes up the same height with that and with the structure, but maybe I can try the other place with it. So
it also seems to connect with the work that you were just talking about earlier around the pavement kind of. It's almost like you're measuring space through your work. You're measuring kind of a natural space, an outdoor space, as well as then kind of thinking about that in an exhibition context. And I think that kind of leads to an interesting kind of aspect of your work, which really is thinking about how each object in your installations is codependent on one another. There's a real tension and balance that you just talked about, but there's when you see your work in physical space, it's very, 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 very much a core aspect of your work. And for me, this kind of tension and balance really emanates of an atmosphere of calmness, which maybe does connect to what you previously said just now about this idea of kind of the sculpture as like a divine object. It really does emit some kind of calming atmosphere. Could you just maybe expand a little bit more on this importance of tension and balance in your work for us? Because I feel like it's really key.
And my work made up individual parts that stood by balancing, and they are filled with the tension. And also they can be disassembled, but instantly transform into the parts and the material. And the work can be described as having tension, but in the other hand, I can say still free from the form. And also the work is always like a process or never ends. And also the work is whole, but always a part. So my work is a process of realizing there is a space and also understanding why it's existing now. So yeah, this also this way is very suitable and convenient for the transportation. It can be disassembled. So then I sometimes refer to this as a like kind of IKEA method as a joke, but yeah, but maybe this is not the best way to say, because including a lot of misunderstanding of this word. So yeah, and also there is a reason why my artwork has attention. Like I make this kind of way to make artwork, because I heard the question myself, why it's necessary the artwork needs to be on the display stand or display box. So I feel the on the display box or something lighting, I feel like artwork will like pretending as an artwork or try to become artwork. It's not so interesting, because artwork in the process is more active, but on the display box is feel like something different. So then I thought how I can show the freshness of the process of the artwork in the exhibition space. So then I chose this way, like stood by balancing with the form. So,
and also you show the work in another format, in another context, which is on the screen that we're just looking at now. And in that way, the sculpture is, you've literally reinstalled the sculpture in an outdoor space on grass, with the wind blowing the chain and the twig in space, which I think really does also speak to your interest in removing it from a kind of a rigid art context, and then placing it to another space. And that for me, that mirroring of the two works displayed in one on the floor and then one in the film really spoke to that, and worked really well. Like I really love the atmosphere of the blowing, the wind blowing and the birds singing, and seeing this work kind of in a completely quite unusual setting, really.
Nice.
You wouldn't stumble across that under a tree.
Yeah, for me, this way is a quite first time to do the artwork with a sound. So then, because I wanted to show the like different aspect of the work in the outdoor surrounding nature, continue to changing the moment and the moment like grass is growing up. Also, the leaf were getting the color darker, and at the time, the artwork is gently involved with the nature, but when the strong wind comes, suddenly artwork was changed, suddenly strongly involved with the nature. In this moment, I felt a fear of this work, because the work become a part of the non-human being. So yeah, but in the other hand, in indoor space, the work seems more calm and stable. So maybe I wanted to show the stillness and the motion at the same time in the exhibition space. So that's why I show the artwork and also the film work, which is exhibited in the outside before. So how it's different.
All of the works in the show have a kind of a lightness to them, or a transparency. So you can, as you said before, you can see through the works that kind of look like a mirror without a mirror in place. Or you can see here there's glass that you can see through. Everything has a kind of a transparency to it. And I was reading a kind of an interview that you'd done previously, and you said that you like to listen to the materials and objects that you work with, which I thought was a really nice way of also thinking about audio coming into your work in some way, actually thinking about this kind of sonic landscape as well as the object landscape that you're working with. I actually wanted to ask a really practical question around, like, you as a maker. You come from a background in working with silver and jewelry, and I'm just really interested to know how you really work with wood. And is it something that you do solo? Is it something that you really you actually make all these objects yourself? Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, and the first I get the material, very rough material. And when I get the material, first I make the right angle, like a square dimension at the first, because of once I want to bring the material to my side, it's too much organic material. So then if I don't make the surface or right angle, it's quite difficult to control. So that's why once I want to bring my side, and this is because this is a bit different from the like carving sculpture of the mass, for example, like a little bit different way. And I'm using the tool and the technique is originally for the carpenter, also the furniture maker or architect, not for using the sculpture tools. So, but also in Germany, since I came to Germany, I actively using the electric machine as well. Okay. Because this is a different element from the manual process, what I used to do in Japan. And this gap brings me a new idea. So sometimes I want to release my my technique from my hand, even forgetting is innate human function, but it's not so easy.
I mean, you can really see your hand, your physical hand in the way that you make the works. I think your next slide, if we could just move to that, with the one with the mirrors, the linked work. So we're now moving into the second room, which is the back of the foundation, and this has kind of a different atmosphere. Actually, it has quite a different
exactly,
to it, doesn't it? You can still hear the sound work coming from the other room, but it's like you forget, you kind of leave that room and you come into another, and it has a very different atmosphere. And this one for me spoke more to the domestic sphere, the kind of the things that maybe we live with in our daily lives, because we're not kind of greeted with this outdoor kind of perspective in this room. And this piece here on the floor with the kind of codependent mirrors. I was looking at the joinery of the wood. Really, I mean, it's really beautiful. I think it's a really important element to hone in on in your practice, especially because we can't see the work together physically today. But I felt that was just your process and the time that you take and the care and the love that you put into these objects, I think is really, it has a resonance, and it's really very important to the way you work. In this work, I felt like you'd shifted all these kind of familiar objects of our everyday life, from the mirror to the coat stand to the crackers that we might eat for a snack, and you've kind of turned them into something unfamiliar, slightly unfamiliar, slightly uncanny, slightly removed from our lives. And there's a sense of repetition, which again, I think is something that's very important to your work, this idea of repetition and removal. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about why you use this motive of the mirror and what that symbolizes to you?
Yeah, and for me, you call it mirror is very interesting, because there are not actual mirror there, but of course I chose this word in a title of this work, but no actual mirror. So I'm very interested in how the audience recognize the form. And my work has seems like a relatable form, but it doesn't match the form of the memory recollected from it. So I wanted to vibrate individual memories through those gaps, and creating the layer of recognition with my work. So maybe I can say that work is kind of like seems like the mirror, but also I can say it's kind of like a window or a door to see the other works.
This idea of, sorry, go on. The idea of history and memory in your work, I think, is really interesting as well, and how we as humans assign a kind of memory or a history to certain objects or spaces or smells or sounds. I think that seems to come across in your work quite a lot. It also really reminded me, and we talked about this very briefly, of surrealist painter Dorothea Tanning's work, which she really looks at these kinds of domestic spaces and turns them slightly on their head. And it made me think, which is be my last question before we kind of open up to the audience, but it made me think, I wanted to know where when you're working on these objects, these processes for quite some time, what are your influences? Like what do you listen to? What artists are kind of at the forefront of your mind, or texts, or like, what influences?
Yeah, and for me, often inspired from the everyday action and the techniques that is not given the name, like around us, the full of object and the forms and action. So I use them as a technique in my work as well, and which I call the anonymous technique. It's including natural dynamics as well. And I taking the many photos of those techniques as a source for my artwork. And also sometimes someone's word is more inspiration for my work than someone's work. And for example, literature, philosophy, poet, or also attracted the word people who live totally different from me. And also as a ongoing exhibition at the Daiwa Foundation, I also ask to the birds also, and sometimes ask to the dog or flowers or something very, very different things when I lost. But the end, I always arrive at myself. But sometimes I'm asking to these kind of things. Yeah.
I think
also,
go on.
Also, I have many favorite artists like Louis Bourgeois and also Mark Manders. I really like them. And also the books, the Womb-Belt written by Yukusku, and also the Poet of Space written by Gaston Bachelard. Also, I like.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to ask one more question before I open up. On that regard, where do you get the inspiration for your titles from?
Oh, it's related with my experience of that week. I thought I peeked into the birds, their lives, but also I opened the door or windows of others. So then I felt like some new wind comes into my side. This kind of feeling. So then I decided this title for this exhibition.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.